many of which mention President Trump, shining a renewed spotlight on the president's ties to the late convicted sex offender. Now, both Democrats and Republicans on the House Oversight Committee unleashed the never-before-seen emails yesterday, received as the result of a subpoena from their investigation into Epstein. Democrats highlighted 3 messages that named Trump, including this one from Epstein to his longtime co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, currently serving a 20-year sentence for sex trafficking crimes. Epstein described Trump as the, quote, dog that hasn't barked, and alleged that Trump spent hours at Epstein's home with, and then it's a redacted name of a victim. In another, Epstein claimed that Trump, quote, knew about the girls. It's not clear what Epstein means in these emails, and MSNBC has not independently confirmed any of the allegations. Republicans on the committee later released a trove of more than 20,000 emails and documents accusing Democrats of cherry-picking and saying the public deserves the full truth. Several of those emails also show Epstein focused on Trump and hinting that he had damaging information on him, like this one from 2018, where Epstein said, quote, I know how dirty Donald is. The president, who has denied any wrongdoing, called this a hoax and a distraction from the government shutdown. And White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt pushed back when asked about the emails yesterday by reporters.
Donald Trump has announced a new platform that shocked everyone.
For many years, I have been searching for opportunities that allow people not just to survive, but to thrive in today's economy. And today, I am ready to share with you one of the most promising areas I have created, which will help many people achieve financial freedom and confidence in the future. Follow again bit.com, enter the special word USA25 to claim your wonderful bonus of 1,500 USDT. Make America great again.
Emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong. And what President Trump has always said is that he was from Palm Beach, and so was Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a member at Mar-a-Lago until President Trump kicked him out because Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and he was a creep.
Again, that's a new explanation.
That is.
But we keep getting different explanations on why Jeffrey Epstein was not at the club.
Yeah, and I think big picture, 2 things this week that really could point to a disconnect between President Trump and his supporters are this, which happened late yesterday, calling the Epstein files a hoax.
Right.
I think much of his base really was built upon the concept of releasing the Epstein files and getting justice
because
for the victims.
Presidents and people in the deep state, like FBI directors and attorney generals, were part of a deep state conspiracy to cover up the Epstein files.
Right.
That's what they have saying, including many people in the White House and in the administration now. It's what they've been saying for a decade, and now their base, the MAGA base, is seeing them doing just that.
So the president calling it a hoax in a Truth Social post. And then earlier this week, I believe it was the president who called affordability a con job. I think these are two issues where you could see his supporters feeling a disconnect, feeling a sense that maybe they're being lied to.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. Jonathan Lemire, I will say, Catherine Leavitt got one thing right. These emails legally, as we've read them thus far, prove nothing. But she's also wrong that these emails do not exonerate President Trump. I don't prove anything either way. So, I mean, you've got the legal side of things here, which, again, all we've heard, all the reports we've heard from NBC have been that there isn't anything legally in there that, if they're all released, that will legally impact him. That's what NBC reporting has been in the past. But on the other side of it, as I explained, politically, this is just damaging. And it's also damaging, like, again, I think the Republicans were stupid to release 20,000 plus more emails that just gave even more stories about Epstein saying he'd be a conduit between Russia and and the Trump administration would explain to Russia more about who Donald Trump really was. We learned that Ken Starr signed off when emails to Jeffrey Epstein. Hugs.
Gosh.
Ken. A lot in there about Larry Summers. Just a lot to unwind from those 20,000 plus. And here's the crazy thing. Oh, wait. There's more.
Oh, my God.
Like, supposedly, this is just a subset of all the Epstein files. And that's what reporters are saying. Give us the more. Thank you, Republicans, for releasing 20,000 plus. You've kept this alive another week, is what probably Washington reporters with, like, ink-stained fingers, they still have ink, don't they, Jonathan, are saying right now. I mean, it's just seems to be a mistake. There you go.
Yeah, Ken Starr taking collateral damage yesterday, to be sure. That's not how I would sign off an email to Jeffrey Epstein. But we'll leave that there. To Carolyn Levitt and the press secretary yesterday, first of all, a lot of her answers were sort of non-denial denials, because, again, I think there's a lot she doesn't know at this point. But, Joe, your overall point. Right. Your overall point is exactly right. We have seen nothing that suggests an actual criminal misdeed by Donald Trump. However, it is extraordinarily politically damaging. And at minimum, what these emails proved yesterday is that while we knew that Trump and Epstein, they were friends, but their relationship was deeper and it was longer. We knew it extended years beyond Trump himself has said. And there's shifting explanations as to why it ended. So that's not a great political look either. And this is, to what Mika said a moment ago, the Epstein conspiracy was such an animating force for the right for so long. And it's never good when you're telling your supporters, your voters, that what you believe is wrong. And that's what Trump is doing right now, is suggesting that something that has been a deeply held belief for many people who have cast their ballots for him, they're now saying, no, don't look at that. It's a hoax. It has graduated to hoax status in Trump's nomenclature. For more, let's bring in MSNBC senior national security reporter David Rohde, who has insight into the Justice Department. So, David, let's go right there. Talk to us a little more about what we know, these extraordinary interventions, apparently, with the DOJ and some Republican lawmakers to try to get them to switch their votes. But also, what role does DOJ play going forward in terms of material that may or may not see the light of day?
It's, to me, been an extraordinary example of the Justice Department mishandling this whole thing. It's sort of one of these situations of, the cover-up in a way is worse than the crime. Months ago, Pam Bondi talked about how she had Jeffrey Epstein's client list sitting on her desk. That sort of gave fuel to the fire then and really started all this. And then yesterday, there's reporting from our colleague Ken Delanian that Lauren Boebert, who's been one of the House members who's signed this petition for, pushing for all these documents to be released, was brought into the White House. And in a meeting there, Attorney General Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel pressured her to stop pushing for the documents to be released. And so it's just extraordinary. And in the middle of it all, you had Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, going down, spending 2 days with Ghislaine Maxwell, interviewing her, but not asking really tough questions. And subsequently, as part of that, Maxwell's now in a much nicer federal facility in Texas. So all of this shows that the Justice Department is sort of making the scandal worse and I think damaging its own credibility in the process.
So, David, I'm so glad you just brought up Todd Blanche, a name that should have come up earlier in this program, because I think that is so damning yesterday. First, we know Ghislaine Maxwell lies, and it seems very clear that what we learned yesterday's emails, that she continues to lie and did so to Todd Blanche. But talk to us a little more about, that meeting, that, again, an extraordinary meeting that seems to violate norms, shall we say, for DOJ behavior, that private meeting he had with her and then her resulting transfer to a much cushier prison. Talk to us more about how, now that, after we learned what we did yesterday, just give us how that casts that meeting in a new light.
What hung over the meeting and what hangs over Ghislaine Maxwell now, again, who was convicted of trafficking girls and is in prison for, I think, roughly 20 years, is could she be pardoned as part of this? Could her sentence be commuted? And the president's, used that power very aggressively. But in terms of Blanche, It's extraordinary. Law enforcement officials for the last 50 years, since the J. Edgar Hoover reforms and other reforms, are supposed to get facts. That interview did not delve into the facts. It wasn't a sort of impartial effort to bring evidence forward that might be used in court. And this is this broader dynamic of the Justice Department sort of serving as the president's law firm. Todd Blanche was President Trump's defense lawyer in his New York trial and in other cases, and he's now the Deputy Attorney General. And this is a moment for the American public. We've talked before, this is sort of a giant civics lesson for the country. If you don't have an independent Justice Department, then and it's simply there to protect the president, this is what happens. And you have, again, the Attorney General and the FBI director pressuring a member of Congress to stop asking to release the Epstein documents. That's extraordinary. Where is that part of a law enforcement, effort to find out the facts in an investigation? So we'll see what happens, but it's this scandal is not going away.
And Mika, to David's point there about a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell, here's what Karoline Leavitt, the press secretary, said when she was asked about that possibility yesterday. I'll just read the quote. She's asked, is the president considering a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell? She responds, it's not something he's talking about or even thinking about at this moment in time, which again seems to have a little wiggle room to it and is not a definitive no.
A little? Yeah, you can drive a truck through that sort of gap right there.
MSNBC senior national security reporter David Rode, thank you. We'll be watching all of this. And
John Heilman, let me just circle back to you really quickly about the meeting now between Todd Blanche and Ghislaine Maxwell. And, of course, some of the things that she said, Donald Trump, nowhere to be seen, nowhere here. And then one of the first emails the Democrats put out is where Epstein seems to be accusing Donald Trump of things, inappropriate things, and Ghislaine Maxwell getting that email, agreeing.
Right. I mean, look, here's the question, Joe, about this. Todd Blanche goes down there to do that meeting. Now, and we have tape of at least some of it, right? If you were trying to find the truth, that you were a lawyer, you being a simple country lawyer yourself,
yes,
you would walk in the room, you would have all these emails, and you would ask Ghislaine Maxwell to explain what these emails mean. For instance, that would be one thing that any attorney would do if they were on an actual fact-finding mission. To the best of my recollection, and I looked at this a little bit yesterday, I don't think Todd Blanche went into that meeting with any of the email record, did not go in there to actually conduct a fact-finding mission. He went in there to allow Ghislaine Maxwell to help the president. And people have said that before. It was kind of self-evident that was the case. He was trying to give her a forum in which she could say, well, Donald Trump did nothing wrong. But the release of these emails makes clear the extent to which that was true, because I would say not just simple country lawyer, I'd say any first-year, second-year law student who was doing a summer internship and was asked to go out on an actual fact-finding mission with Ghislaine Maxwell would have gone to this email record and used it to try to elicit some facts. Todd Blanche did none of that. I think that's pretty devastating for the argument that he was just down there trying to find out the truth.
Well, and these are just the emails we're aware of. The Justice Department and Todd Blanche obviously has access
way more
to far more damaging evidence for whomever was involved in this process, and certainly has damaging evidence on Ghislaine Maxwell that the last thing she deserves would be a pardon or moving to a cushier situation during her jail time.
We're going to continue to follow this. Still ahead on Morning Joe, Democratic federal government shutdown officially ended last night. The legislation passed the House 222 to 209, with 6 Democrats joining most Republicans to get it over the finish line. It then went to President Trump, who signed the legislation in a late-night Oval Office event surrounded by Republican members of Congress, members of the cabinet, and business leaders. The package extends government funding through January 30th and includes a minibus of 3 full-year appropriations bills. It also fully funds SNAP benefits through the end of next September and reverses layoffs that took place during the shutdown, while blocking more until February. Still at issue, is the Affordable Care Act subsidies, an extension of which was not included in the final deal, despite the demands of Democrats. House Speaker Mike Johnson has not committed to a vote on extending those subsidies.
I've been asked 100 times whether I'll commit to putting any ACA extension on the floor. What I have said from the very beginning, and we were consistent about this, and you all know from day one, the first order of business was to get the government open and working for the people again. It's the most basic responsibility, and we finally got that done tonight. And I said, as soon as the government was open, we would turn our attention to health care and all the other issues that are out there.
Well, I mean, I will say a Democrat who was cynical and only cared about winning elections would hope that he wouldn't ever allow that vote to go on the House floor, because it would only hurt Republicans in the long run and help Democrats. But of course, there are those of us who care more about how people are dealing with exploding health care costs out there. Let's bring in one, Democratic Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania. He was one of 7 Democratic senators and one independent who broke ranks with the party Sunday night, sparking the beginning of the end of the longest of government shutdowns in U.S. history. He's also voted with Republicans over a dozen times over the course of the shutdown, while most Senate Democrats held out. Senator Fetterman's here to talk about his new memoir titled Unfettered.
I like it.
Senator, thanks so much for being with us. We will get to that in 1 minute. Just wanted you to tell our viewers, our friends, about your vote to reopen the government. What were you thinking, and why do you think it was in the best interest of the people of Pennsylvania?
Mm-hmm.
Well, absolutely. It was always just country over the party. And now people it never made any sense to shut it down at that point anyway, because now if the Democrats in the Senate now decides in January, you're going to have the opportunity to shut it back down. And now we have a lot of time to make the argument to the nation that we want to extend those tax credits, and I actually voted countless times for those now too, and I'll be the same guy that's going to vote for them as well. Now, I refuse to put 42 million Americans, food insecurity in the middle of that. And now, why would we want to make flying less safe and that kind of chaos across our airports in the nation now too, and all the unions pay the military, pay everybody, and now that's a core responsibility for me as a senator to make sure that our government stays open and to continue to advocate the kinds of core values as a Democrat. And I'm not changing the party, but it's like if a Democrat's not allowed to say, hey, it's wrong, it's always wrong to shut our government down. I think that's pretty reasonable, because that used to be our official position on it, honestly.
Right. Hey, Senator, let me ask you about exploding health care premiums. Obviously, Democrats, yourself included, it's about timing, want to make sure that those ACA benefits and subsidies continue. Could you talk a little bit about how much Pennsylvania voters are feeling the crush of rising insurance premiums?
Yeah, well, now that's also part of the history in all of this. These subsidies that was wrote by us, the Democrats. The Democrats wrote that. And they were designed to expire at the end of the year. When we were in the majority, we wrote that to expire. And now here we are back now to have this conversation. Now, compare that in Pennsylvania. 2 million Pennsylvanians rely on SNAP to feed themselves and their family. And around 400,000 they receive these kinds of tax credits. And now we can fight for both. And that's, for me as a Democrat, that's what I'm doing. For me, the core kinds of disagreement perhaps is that shut our government down and hold all those people hostage. And I refuse to do those things. It's been a very easy vote. And I know many Democrats think that's smart to plunge us into that kind of chaos, but I refuse to do those kinds of things. And that's really at the core. And now we have a lot of time to make that argument. And if this is going to touch a lot of Republicans and their constituents, and I think it will, and now they will agree some version of that, say, hey, let's now, create more kinds of tax credits to make healthcare more affordable. And I think that is possible.
Mike Barnicle is with us, and he has the next question. Mike.
Senator, how many families in Pennsylvania depend on SNAP benefits? And were you
2 million.
How many?
2 million. 2 million.
2 million families.
Oh my God.
So how were you surprised at all with the intense effort made by the Trump administration to keep going to court to prevent families from receiving SNAP benefits?
No, not surprised. I'm just saying it's like just keep it open. And now, as long as we keep our government shut down, we're not getting SNAP and we're not getting those tax credits that for the health care either. You're getting neither of them. And now, well, with our government is open, all of that now returns to us. And now we can have the opportunity to sell that to the American voters. And now the people, the real audience are the Republicans in the House and in the Senate to agree, yes, let's do this. But to people that are watching, it's like the Democrats, we designed these to expire at the end of the year. This wasn't something the Republicans are taking. It's like, that's how we designed this.
And Senator, good morning. We should get you on the top story of the day, the Epstein emails released yesterday. Give us your reaction to what you did read yesterday, and also what do you hope happens next? What else do you want to see make the light of day?
I think what's going to happen is it's entirely appropriate. Release everything. Release all of them. Another one of my questions is like, we sat on those for 4 years too. So, I don't really understand, either. There are a lot of questions. So when everything is released and everything comes out, and then we'll have a more full picture of exactly what's involved in all of these kinds of things. So, yes, I do believe there will be enough votes to release those files, and then we can have the opportunity to absorb all of it, the totality of it.
Senator, tell us about your book, Unfettered, and also why you decided to share certain parts of your journey.
Well, because there's some things that are they're not a big political winner to talk about depression and actually taking your life. But I think it's an important conversation that we have in our nation. Millions of Americans suffer from depression, and now we have an epidemic of suicide in our nation as well too. Veterans, around 18 of them take their lives. And now here we have the opportunity to have that conversation. And that's exactly what this is about. Because I've had conversations with member of Congress. I've had conversations with people all across the country now, and they've been touched by that message.
I really appreciate you sharing that with our viewers and also for the readers of the book. What are you hoping people will take away from this book?
Well, my takeaway has been consistent, and I dedicated the book to those folks. Is like, people that are suffering from that kinds of depression, stay in that game, stay in the game. Don't erase yourself, because I've been in that place in my life. And I'm so grateful every moment that didn't happen. And that's my message. And after losing friends to suicide as I have, I beg people to just stay in the game of life.
But is though, for you though, don't you find the Senate, don't you find political life in Washington, D.C. to be very isolating? Haven't you talked about it's just a real challenge day in and day out, isn't it, to do the people's business there?
No. It's like an honor. It's an honor to be Pennsylvania's voice in the Senate.
Right.
I'm just trying to find a way forward in that. And I know both of you have been punished to have a ongoing dialogue with President Trump. I got hit just to have dinner with him after he invited me to have that conversation. Pennsylvania keeps people honest. It's like, in the most purple state in the country, it's like there's both sides. And I've always refused to call the other people, they're fascists or Nazis and those kinds of things. Trying to find a way forward is challenging, but that's the reality. And it's absolutely an honor to represent Pennsylvania in the United States Senate.
There obviously has been
too. Yeah.
There have been Democrats who have been very upset at you because you have met with the president, or you voted with the Republicans some, you voted to reopen the government. I think the last time I checked, you were still voting with the Democratic Party 90% of the time, but you are an independent voice. I'm curious, for those who suggest that you may leave the Democratic Party, what do you say to them?
Well, yes, Joe, thank you for pointing that out. You know, I think I'm like 90.6%.